Okay, rolling. So, I was going to start my last lecture with a little clip that I want to use as a metaphor throughout my little talk here. With Michael's help, I think the pronunciation is Skizine, and it's a French animated cartoon about, well, here's a little bit of it.
Finalement, il n'y a pas eu de dégâts. C'est bien ça?
Pas eu de dégâts? Comment ça? Ouais, c'est vrai. Seulement une antenne sur l'immeuble, en face de chez moi. Et moi? Et moi?
Okay. Then, so a meteor lands outside of his house, and he wakes up, I think 19 centimeters or 91 centimeters beside himself. Literally, he's living beside himself. So he has to learn how to navigate his way through his apartment, and at work, he's got all these charts and graphs and measurements if he wants to open the door. So if the doorknob's here, he has to reach for it here in order to turn it. And then at work, he has to sit, I got to get this measurement right or it's going to drive me nuts. It's like 91 centimeters outside of him. So he has to place himself 91 centimeters beside his desk. And he's actually outside of the window of his office typing so he could be typing in the building. It's crazy, but it's just you get so hopeless for him because for me, it's a metaphor for how so many of us go through our lives living beside ourselves or living outside ourselves, or this gap of who we truly are and who we think we ought to be, and the efforting through life that we have to endure to maintain, not mind the gap, but maintain the gap. And what are the meteors that create that split? What are the things that happen to even make us not turn up as ourselves? There's one thing in the new agey cliche things, be yourself, or just love yourself. Well, that's not very helpful for somebody who doesn't even know how to love themselves or what that even means, or is finding themselves. Well, be myself. I don't know who myself is because we've become so accustomed to not living as we are, but living as who we think we ought to be. The meteors that separate us from ourselves. They could be as dramatic as abuse or trauma, and something made us feel like it wasn't safe to turn up as ourselves, or the subtle and almost indiscernible meteorites of, that's not ladylike. Boys don't cry. Clean your plate. Fake it till you make it. These things in our lives, these messages that just tell us, oh, I'm not okay who I am, so I'm going to be someone I'm not and maintain that gap. I think some of the most profound things in my life has happened when that gap has recollapsed. And because it's not helpful to say love yourself and be yourself, I thought I'd give a couple examples from my own life where, and I'm not saying when the gap closed, my life became some magical unicorns farting rainbows kinds of things. There was still life's challenges, and there was still eating disorders, and there was still depression, and there's still things to go through. But when the gap closed, navigating those things became so much easier. So the first one I remember that I wanted to share was when I grew up. Many of you have heard me say, my mom used to joke that she had 4 sons and I was the only one who grew boobs. But the little meteorites of somewhere around the age of 7 or 8, where that wasn't okay. Maybe the first one was a friend saying, why do you dress like a boy? And me going, I didn't even know I dressed like a boy, but okay. In the way they said it, made me think, okay, something's wrong with me. And the notes that would come home from my 2nd grade teacher encouraging my mom to dress me in dresses, and then why do you always play with the boys on the playground? Oh, maybe I'm not supposed to do that. So trying to force myself in, and it soon became like around my daughter's ages. I recognize that age where every day I didn't want to get out of bed because I had to effort to try to be more feminine, to fit in, really wanting to play football with the boys on the playground, and playing tetherball with the girls and house and, and it was so much effort. And then one day, we grew up in a lake community. My brothers and I would always go fishing, and we'd catch bluegill. The lake was flooded with bluegill, and these fish would eat the bass eggs, so we weren't allowed to put them back in. So my brothers would toss the fish to me, and I had a hammer and a Swiss Army knife. And so they'd toss the fish over to me, and I'd bang it on the head and then dissect it because I really wanted to see what was inside. And there was this moment at the lake one day when I just kind of picked up my head and I saw my 3 brothers over by the dock, and I was just so happy, just being myself. And something in my awareness collapsed the gap. And I just realized I don't want to try anymore. And I started to play football on the playground, and I started to, dress as I wanted. And wouldn't you know it, like, bringing us to my second example, nature kind of has a way of injecting femininity into a little tomboy when it's in due course. And that was in my young adolescence when I started wanting the boys to kind of take notice of me. And I would observe, the gap happened, the meteorite here was when I made up what it took to get noticed by a boy. And I would observe the other girls and what they were doing, the other girls that seemed to be getting noticed by the boys, and I wasn't like that. So I would monitor them while, talking to somebody. I would kind of, in my peripheral vision, be watching the hair flipping and the hand gestures and the makeup that they would, and trying to mimic that so that I could also be noticed, or, and that, the effort, I don't even know how long it went on, but there was a big gap there, and I just felt like, oh, nobody likes me, whatever. And it was so much effort because I wasn't being myself anyway. And then I remember at a high school football game when my gap closed, and there was Corey Newgesser out of the corner of my eye, and I had my subject that I was trying to get interested in me, or I thought, like, okay, there's Corey situated, there's Corey Newgesser, and I could see her, and she'd flip her hair, and I'd flip my hair, and she'd go like this, and I'd go like this, and the guy walks away, probably because he was bored or like so nauseated by my inauthenticity. I mean, it was probably palpable, and I was just like, fuck, I can't do that anymore. Like, it doesn't work anyway, and it requires so much effort. So I actually wanted to just go watch the football game, like the whole time. I would like to really watch the football game. So I said, screw this. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just going to go watch the game. Whatever. I'll figure this out someday. And I go over by the fence and watch the football game. And within 30 seconds, 4 guys showed up. One tall, dark, and handsome boy asked me to marry him 14 years later. And we just sat, and it was so effortless. And I'm like, oh. And it was the same feeling as on that dock with my brothers. I get what I want when I just turn up as myself. And there's so much less effort. The biggest one was after marriage. And not only was I trying to maintain the gaps of, okay, this is what I'm like as a career person, and this is what I really want, and this is where I'm at. And then as a wife, this is the all go, no quit, never let them see you sweat, all American, go get them. And this is the one I really wanted to be like. This is the kind of mom that I thought I should be. And this is the one that was really me. And not only all these gaps was I trying to maintain, but also creating and then maintaining gaps for everyone else. I had 3 kids, and I don't want to do swimming lessons. I don't want to do piano lessons. Yeah, well, I know that. I don't want to be a Girl Scout. Well, I don't want to be the cookie mom either, but we have to do this. We have to play the game. And it was so exhausting. And by 37, it had made me so sick and so depressed and so suicidal that I finally just went, I'm just going to be that mom. I'm just going to be that wife. Everyone might leave me and I'm just going to be me. And my kids I didn't have them do anything they didn't want to. I let them watch TV, despite what all the research said. And all of a sudden, motherhood became so effortless. I learned to love them watch bugs. I like to be out in nature. I like to take my kids out on hikes. We never had time for it before because they were all too busy at their Shakespearean pottery for performance classes. And when the gap closed, everything started flowing better. And I even had other mothers asking me, how do you do it? How do I do what? How do you turn up and just do it like you, and your kids are so great and they're so easygoing and engaging and whatever? I'm like, I don't know. And now I do know. It's because I wasn't splitting them. I wasn't being the meteorite that made them feel like they had to maintain someone who they were not. And then the fourth example is the one that's happened recently in my life. And it was the big career gap. This is who I ought to be, and this is who I am. Actually, there were many. And same situation where, I don't have to maintain that persona. I don't have to maintain that. It's just me. And not only the career, but I could turn up as myself in everything. And it's just been such an amazing journey. And when I stopped efforting through life recently, then whatever needs to come up and happen has come up. And there's just, I have yet to see what this merging of the voices with the merging of my separate selves has in store. I don't really care. And I'm just going to close by reading something that I wrote recently. And ironically, I wrote this for a course that I felt like I should do. And it wasn't, it was subtle. It wasn't quite there, but when I saw it. And the more you become yourself, I found, the easier it is to discern your yes, no. But this is what I wrote as a descriptor of the course that I ended up not doing for now. It starts with a quote from Rumi: "Run from what's comfortable, forget safety, live where you fear to live, destroy your reputation, be notorious. I have tried prudent planning long enough. From now on, I'll be mad." We put on our first mask when we understand the language that parents, teachers, mentors, neighbors, and clergy use to tell us who we ought to be. It's not who we are, but we believe them. Then somewhere in the middle of our lives, or throughout our lives really, there's a calling home. Who we are will no longer tolerate being hidden under the masks and armor that we've piled on to protect ourselves from exposure. Being hidden and remaining silent becomes uncomfortable, like one of those dreams where you're screaming but no sound comes out, or you're trying to run but somebody turned up the gravity. Many fight for their costume, too fearful of exposure, even until their death. But the brave ones, who recognize that they're living someone else's life, hidden under their costume's burden, make the courageous decision to get naked, to live their life as themselves, come what may. But oh, when it knocks, if we only have the courage to crack open the door of invitation, then grace does the work to burn off all that is not you. And you begin to taste life with your own tongue, and you begin to hear yourself speaking with your own voice, and you begin to see with your very own eyes, and no one can ever again convince you that what you're tasting, saying, or seeing is not how it ought to be. And even the fear of ending up alone is not enough to put the costume on again, because when you have yourself, you have the very thing you were seeking all along. Thanks.